Okay, then, so Tina, you ready? Okay, so, all right, folks, let's get started here. Today is Monday, March.
Excuse me, Pat.
We're getting some echo.
Feedback on the call-in line. Can everybody make sure that they're muted, please? Thank you.
Okay, so once again, this is Monday, March 15th, 2021. The time is 11:07 a.m. This is our weekly Commissioner's Status Update. Attending Commissioners Duncan, Brooks, and Filios. Do we have any changes to the agenda? Hearing none, what I am going to do is I'm going to take the, where's our Second Amendment Ordinance number 4 at the request of Sheriff Norris, who has another appointment. So we're going to move that up to the first item. Now, I will say this, public comment will be at the end. Okay, so we'll be discussing it. We have other items on the agenda that we do have to get through. And so, time permitting, we'll take the public comment at the end. So, I guess we might as well get started here. Leslie, you placed it on the agenda. Go right ahead.
Sure. I've gotten many emails from constituents seeing these types of ordinances passed around the country. And I know how, Bill says he's a proven advocate, Second Amendment advocate, and Sheriff Norris supports the Second Amendment, will defend your constitutional gun rights. So I thought that I would bring it forward for discussion and see what the thoughts are. And so I know Sheriff has read it, and I'm fine to hear from him.
Okay. Bill, any thoughts?
Well, I never be afraid of discussing an idea. That's and this is an idea, and there are some good reasons for it, and there are some good reasons against it. And I'll let our sheriff give his opinion, and then we can discuss it some more.
Okay. Sheriff Norris, would you like to come forward, please?
Thank you, and thank you for taking me out of order. I appreciate that. I would just like to tell you that regardless of what you decide here today, and regardless of what they decide in Washington, D.C., there will be no gun confiscation here in Kootenai County, period.
Yeah.
We already have a state law that doesn't allow for constitutional officers and peace officers to enforce federal gun laws. So I want to say thank you for taking me out of order, but I want everybody to rest assured there will be no gun confiscation here in Kootenai County, period, regardless. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Before you leave.
Sure.
That's the final word, folks. He is the chief law enforcement officer of Kootenai County. If he doesn't enforce it, there's nothing to worry about.
Kind of like mask wearing.
Very similar. I've spent 30 years in this business, and I've never enforced a law on somebody that is not doing something wrong, and we're not going to start now.
Okay, fair enough. Sheriff, while you're here, and before I let you go, I saw something very recently that seemed to indicate that Idaho, is one of 3 sanctuary, if that's the right term.
4,
states.
I think.
Is it 4 now? Are you familiar with that?
Well, if you're referring to the law that protects the Second Amendment here in Idaho, that states that law enforcement officers, constitutional officers don't have to abide by federal laws, that's correct.
Okay.
So would you be okay if this were passed today so the citizens of Kootenai County, I'll just use the term, feel better about it and be able to support you in your job, knowing that the citizens are behind you?
Well, there's many dynamics to this. Do we want the attention of the federal government to Kootenai County? You know, I'd prefer to be the Second Amendment sanctuary county without the attention of the federal government. But if they want to give us attention, I'm ready for the attention also. Absolutely. So to me, honestly, you're asking my opinion. I'd prefer that you work on other items that are more pressing to the residents of Kootenai County. I believe that there is other things that, and you know what, Bill and I, we agree on many, many things. I don't necessarily agree on our new form of county government that is being proposed, but I don't always agree with my wife either. So, you know,
Well, Sheriff, would we, if this passed, would we get any new protections or rights? Say what?
no,
Not
you
at
will
all.
not. There will be no gun confiscation, gun enforcement in Kootenai County, period.
There'd be no enhancement of any rules or regulations that prohibit people from?
No, that would have to be done at the state level.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sheriff. Appreciate your time. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay, then. All right, so should we move on then?
Well, does that mean I don't have a second to bring this forward for a business meeting to adopt?
Bill?
No?
Here's my concern. When you take the position that I think Sheriff Norris politely advised us against, which is to open ourselves up and make a public statement, bear in mind that when you declare sanctuary, you're declaring sanctuary for anyone and everyone. A sanctuary is a refuge. It can be a refuge for Antifa. It can be a refuge for insurrectionists, neo-Nazis. For that matter, and this is one of my concerns, is a refuge for potential gang members, which is incidentally a growing problem in Spokane. So if they find this to be a refuge, we've got a little bit of a problem. And in fact, we might have a major problem. And so I am fine with the position that the sheriff has taken. He is willing to stand up. He has already expressed his position. He's the chief law enforcement officer, and I think it's his call. I don't think it's necessary to go to a public vote.
I think if we start making sanctuaries, I don't know about most of the people in the county, but I was dead set against California making sanctuary areas for illegal immigrants. That was wrong. The problem is, it was wrong because it was called nullification. And nullification means that any little burg, county, city, whatever, can say whatever laws they don't like, we don't follow. And if we had that in this country, it would be a zoo. Now, we already are a very strong gun rights state. And I just very quickly want to go through. I was a member of the National Rifle Association.
Well, before you go any further, just define nullification so we're all
Well,
on the same.
nullification means that you say, here's a law that the federal, in this case, the federal government has passed, and we're not going to follow it. One example, income tax law. That's nullification.
No, I believe that nullification has to do with things that are directly against the Constitution of the United States. So it's not talking about just any law that's passed. It's only those that are against the Constitution. And that's what I think the Founding Fathers were talking about when they're talking about nullification.
But not only did the Founding Fathers talk about nullification, but it's been talked about all the way into the 20th century. And it has never been used in any court case because, frankly, it's a loser. And that's not the way, that's not the way to change things. The way to change things is the way Idaho has done it. We have got very strong laws that protect our citizens' Second Amendment. Now, I want to finish what I started. I was 16 years old and got my first membership of the National Rifle Association. I've had guns, will have guns, do have guns my whole life.
Make sure you're muted, please.
Go ahead, Bill.
I'm an NRA rifle instructor, pistol instructor, and a world-class shotgun instructor. I shoot a lot. I believe in the second. I carry concealed carry permit, enhanced concealed carry permit, and so does my wife. And I believe in it. And if this state were otherwise unfriendly to the Second Amendment, I wouldn't live here. This is one of the important reasons I live here. But to do something like this that basically makes you feel good, I'm against that.
Leslie, any other thoughts?
Just Pat. Pat, did you want to
Pat,
weigh
go-
in here?
Pat Braden, incidentally, is one of our civil prosecuting attorneys. Go ahead, Pat.
I think, well, I'm kind of of two minds on this as well. I'm as much pro Second Amendment as anybody, including Commissioner Brooks. But after discussing this with my boss, Barry McHugh, we were concerned about this actually prohibiting the two chief law enforcement officers in the county, the sheriff and the prosecuting attorney, from exercising their discretion in upholding their oath of office as far as what laws to be enforced and how they should be enforced. And certainly Sheriff Norris is very emphatically stated his intent as far as how he will exercise his discretion, and I'm very happy to hear that. At the same time, I don't want to be setting a precedent where the commissioners are purporting to infringe upon the autonomy of the other elected officials, and that would be a violation of state law and, in fact, the state constitution itself. And so that's why I kind of backed off a little bit from the position I had taken earlier with respect to this. I think if the commissioners wanted to do anything, and it doesn't sound like it's going to happen, but if the commissioners wanted to do anything, perhaps this could be revised to save the pro Second Amendment language and just adopt it as a policy statement of what we believe to be unconstitutional under the Second Amendment, and then just encourage the sheriff and the prosecutor to exercise their discretion in that matter in terms of either not enforcing such law or making it their lowest priority. So that's what I would have to say to this.
Thank you, Pat.
Bill?
And I tried to, let
Go ahead, Pat.
ahead of time so I didn't, so you wouldn't be blindsided when I did speak up in the meeting.
Yeah, unfortunately, we've been in other meetings since 10 a.m. this morning, so we didn't get your latest communication.
Pat, do we, this is Bill Brooks.
Well, I apologize for that.
Pat, this is Bill Brooks. Do we, in fact, get any additional rights or protections if this were to pass?
I don't believe so. In fact, there would be a concern about making a criminal penalty for conduct that may ultimately be decided in the courts to be constitutional.
Thank you, Pat.
Okay, so Pat, if I understand you correctly, you don't have a problem, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, with the position that Sheriff Norris has taken. Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct. That's within his authority and discretion under the Constitution and laws of the state of Idaho.
Okay, I'm fine with that. It's kind of interesting, and I'll try to keep this comment brief. People talk about tyranny, and typically tyranny as it potentially comes from the federal government. I don't know how many of you have known tyranny or your families have experienced it, but in the late 1800s, my grandfather left Greece for what was then Tsarist Russia, because Greece was a very poor country. Anyway, so he went over there, started what eventually became a prosperous slipper manufacturing business. Went back to the Aegean, took my grandmother out of the barn, as they did in those days. Anyway, went on to have 9 children. Actually, 8 of the 9 were born there. In 1917, the Bolshevik Revolution broke out. That revolution took 5 years. They imprisoned my grandfather. They lost their fortune, and they had to flee the country for 40 days and nights on horse-drawn sled. My grandmother lost 3 children to now the childhood diseases that we inoculate against: diphtheria, scarlet fever, and whooping cough. And in my home, there were certain words that were prohibited. Communism was one, because my grandmother had watched them line up the Orthodox bishops and slaughter them. Folks, I grew up understanding oppression. I didn't experience it firsthand, but my family did. And what we're seeing here is our sheriff taking a stand to try to safeguard, to do his best to safeguard those protections that we have. I'm a staunch supporter of the Second Amendment. I think the sheriff said it best. Let's do what we need to do. Let's leave it with him. I think he's made a profound statement, and let's stand by it. That's where I come from.
Okay.
Anything else?
Nope.
Okay, let's move forward. Thank you, everyone. But we'll try to hold public comment at the end, time permitting. So we need to move up to item number 1. Kootenai Fire and Rescue, Chief Way, please.
Thank you, Commissioners. Here, I thought all these people were just here to see me. We'll make this brief. I just wanted to update you. As you know, we've been communicating with you for the last few months. We did the land lease at the fairgrounds for our future Station 4, but we're moving forward with a public safety bond to relocate 2 fire stations and add an additional fire station to our coverage area. And I just want to kind of give you a brief description of the projects and give you a little bit of a description and tell you how we got to where we got. And I'll start off by saying I really appreciate your movement last Monday on the idea of impact fees for the fire departments, because I am a believer that growth should pay for growth. However, that's not been the case and not been allowed for a long time for the fire districts, which is exactly why we're doing what we're doing this year, with the hope that then impact fees will impact us in 6 or 7 years. We can start saving money now for that 6 and 7 year time frame when it's time with the growth that's anticipated and needing to build our 6th station, which we will do at some point. So where we're at today, we have 4 stations. We know we're facing significant growth by 2040. Currently, our estimates of the new census are somewhere where our fire district, which we cover Post Falls, Dalton Gardens, and some of the area around the city of Coeur d'Alene, our current estimates are 52 to 53,000 is where we anticipate the census will come in for our estimates. We know that by 2040, we're anticipated to be at 112 to 115,000, so they say. We know that the stations that were built didn't take into a previous diverse workforce. We now have diversity in our ranks, which is a great thing. Statistically, our locations were built long before there was growth in Kootenai County. They were all built along I-90. So all of our stations currently are within a mile of I-90. This does not allow for growth north and south. As you all know and drive, if any of you have driven Highway 41 recently or Prairie recently, you know that Post Falls doesn't look anything like it used to, and nor does our response area. And we've got to be thinking about, we can't just look at the current situation. We're already thinking strategically of the future. So we're in station movement right now, make sure that we're complementing station movement in the future so that this never has to be done again. And certainly I don't think anybody, our last station was built in 1999. I don't think anybody, and the first one was built in 1974. Probably no one in 1974, 1988, or 1999 said, hey, what if we have 100,000 people? And what if our fire district extends all the way north to Wyoming? And what if it covers the east side of the lake and Wolf Lodge, and we have people building houses out there? Because those just weren't considerations back then. But they certainly are now. So our current facilities, Station 1 and Station 2, are not anticipated to need to change. They're actually in excellent locations. Station 2 has actually seen a significant industrial growth out there. They're at Celtice and Pleasant View right now. We know that there are a couple of URDs being considered out there. There are several industries that are currently getting ready to go out there. Station 3, which is currently at 16th and Highway 41 roughly, is one that does not meet our current demand. We cannot get north and west fast enough. Our goal is always to have the first truck on scene of a life-threatening emergency, whether it's medical or fire, within 4 minutes and 59 seconds in our first truck. With that said, with the current traffic and the current growth, we're not meeting 90%. We're not meeting that 90% of the time. We dip below 90% of the time for the first time ever in the last couple of years. And Station 4, which is currently across from the Kroc Center, for many reasons, DEQ will not allow us to inhabit it as a fire station anymore. For the residents of Dalton Gardens, we can provide better protection. We can no longer get to Dalton Gardens within 4 minutes and 59 seconds, or the east side of our fire district. All stations are at capacity for vehicle storage, and we're at capacity for maintenance as well. So the facilities included in this would again be relocating Station number 3 from Highway 41 and 16th to west of Highway 41 on Prairie, moving Station 4 from in front of the Kroc Center to the fairgrounds, and then adding Station 5, which will be on Celtice, just to the west of Hutter, at our our training center. And I'm gonna show you a map where this actually lines out and makes some really good. I'm sorry about that.
It's all right.
Thank you.
It does include an outdoor class. So right now, when we run an academy, there's no shower facilities, there's no restroom facilities. We bring in a porta potty for them to use the restroom, but there's no way for them to clean off after being in a smoke-filled environment, doing things like that. So this outdoor facility would provide a shower, a locker room, some of that, and then a warehouse for storing extra vehicles. And one of the reasons we did that instead of add on to the stations, stations are at $350 per square foot to build. Storage is $115 a square foot to build. I can't come to the taxpayers and ask them to build us storage buildings that cost $350 a square foot. That's unrealistic. So we're actually moving some of our auxiliary vehicle storage, vehicles that aren't used year-round, vehicles that aren't used every day. We have to have backup engines. We have hazmat trucks that get used very infrequently, but the state requires us to have them, things like that, moving them into a storage building rather than in a station. So, reasons for the project. We obviously want faster response times for emergency calls. As we continue to grow, we have to try to maintain that goal of being on scene within 4 minutes and 59 seconds 90% of the time. We know that our growing district does not look like it did. Again, the last time we added a station was 1999. You know that it doesn't look anything like it did in 1999. And then the alignment of the stations better to meet the community needs. We're going to start looking at having ladder trucks where we need ladder trucks and engines where we need engines, tenders and brush trucks where we need brush trucks. We really don't have that ability with smaller stations right now, and this will allow that. Safety, obviously, the growing demands of our region increase the call volume, and we'll show that on the next slide. It does augment the training campus, and we share our training campus with any first responder in the area, law enforcement, fire, EMS that needs it. We're happy to do that. And then it does include a new 107-foot ladder truck, and you'd probably say, man, that seems really tall. Well, as we know that right now we have plans for a 450,000 square foot transportation company in our district. We know that people are planning a minimum of a 5-story hotel along the Highway 41 corridor. We know that the tech park is going to bring a building that has the potential to be 1 million square feet. So we have to be able to get up. It's not just about hoses and long hoses and lines. It's about being able to get elevated in the air. So that's a new capacity. So right now in the 2010 to 2020, we've seen our district grow at 34.5%. In that same amount of time, we've seen the call volume, emergency call volume, increase by 63%. So keep in mind that our last station was built in 1999. So although we've absorbed a 63% call volume increase, it's been without stations. And then the growth of currently underserved areas. Again, we know that in the north end and the west end of our district, there's not a way right now that we can meet that goal of response. So this is where our current station stations line up, I should say. You can see that we have gaps to the north here, and you can see that we don't have very much double coverage and very little triple coverage. And that's important because you say, I live 3 miles from a fire station, I should be okay. Keep in mind our call volume's gone up 63%, so you're not always getting the closest fire truck. If they're there and available, you would get the closest, but they're seeing themselves on calls more often. You can see by this new map, we're increasing. So if you can see that triple coverage really extends along that Highway 41 corridor where you can get realistically 3 stations on scene within 4 minutes and 59 seconds, aiming that one of those would be in the station. These are just some artist rendering of what the projects would be. We have reduced some costs, so we've tried to pare down the stations, again, cutting down the bays and putting vehicles in storage. We've tried to make sure that, so Station 3 and Station 4, the one at Prairie and 41 and the one at the fairgrounds are going to be sister stations. We did that to eliminate costs of duplicating and drawing different designs. The material can all be sourced at the same time. The architecture certainly cuts down. Station number 5 at the training center cannot be the same layout. It cannot have a drive-through bay just because of space constraints. These are the storage building and the outdoor locker room facility. 107-foot aerial truck, we just want to show that we have been responsible. The whole reason of looking at the diagrams on the right is, again, these aren't final plans because we haven't gotten that far in the process, but we've been forward-thinking and allowing to make sure that we cover all of the things you're going to see here that go into a fire station. Fire stations are their homes for 48 hours at a time. Our folks, men and women, spend a third of their lives inside the fire, well, they're not always inside the station, but they live at the station for a third of their lives. So we have to make sure we're covering things like gender neutrality. We have to make sure that, because we want a diverse workforce going forward, we want to make sure that we provide facility maintenance, the flexibility of expansion. We have to take into account of locking in. One of our goals is to lock in one construction company to build all of the buildings so that we reduce our costs by value engineering those things right up front. We have to take into the fact that apparatus that were built in the 70s and 80s are nothing like a 107-foot ladder truck are today, and we need to be able to accommodate that. We do take cancer prevention very seriously, so when you look at our stations, the apparatus area and where they keep all their dirty equipment is all locked away from where they live. That's been important during COVID too. We've really changed the way we live in a fire station. We don't wear the same clothes out on calls that we sit at our dinner table or wear into our bedrooms at night. Obviously, technology has increased. Response times are a major factor. We have to look at the fact that we can't all sit at a table sometimes now and work. They're busier. We have to be able to have flexibility. Hazards, we have to make sure that it provides security for the people and obviously provides ADA compliance. This is just a projected cost of all of the projects. So the bond we're looking at is $14.9 million. It's over 10 years. We've gotten a very low interest rate, the levy rate, and it is, I want to say, although adds to the levy rate, it does cap at 10 years. And our goal is not to ever do a bond again because of the impact fees. Our goal is to make this one time, get us up to a standard. The current standard is one station for every 10,000 people. We're below the current standard for our current population right now. We know that in 7 years, we'll be adding Station 6, and in another 2 years, we'll be looking at Station 7. We want to make sure that that is the way we collect the money for that is through a different mechanism. But we are aware that this does have an impact. We think that we have value engineered it very, originally there was talk of it being $35 or $40 per 100,000. We've been very careful and very sensitive to the idea. We're all taxpayers as well, and so we want to protect our citizens while being responsible with what they trust us to be responsible with. So again, we are running this at the May 18th election. You are the first people we are publicly presenting this to. We present it to the Post Falls Council tomorrow night just because we want to be very transparent. We want to be open and honest. We want to make sure that people have trust in us to not only answer their emergencies, but to be fiscally responsible and ensure their trust with their finances and their wealth as well. So we certainly encourage you to look into it a little more. We wanted to have this today. We will get the information now. All of this very similar information will be posted on our website tomorrow and social media tomorrow. We're very transparent in how we want to answer questions. We will gladly come and talk to any group that it would be affected by this. We have been beginning to have discussions with people about the growth, and we realize we don't go into this not pretending that this is a dynamic situation to talk about, but we also have to look at the fact that we cannot meet our current mission with our current resources, and we take that very seriously. And so I'd be glad to answer any questions for you. If not, I just appreciate the opportunity.
When you're talking about your 107-foot,
Yes, sir.
that's just not up the side of a building. That's over.
Right, you have to look at, you can't just park next to the building and run it straight up. So
Right.
realistically, we can get 7 stories up depending on how far back. One of the things that we're trying to do is work with all of these developers. Our fire marshal's office is busier than they've ever been. In fact, I would argue that they're the 2 busiest guys some days looking at all this, because we're trying to work with people as they come in and plan buildings to make sure we get those offsets. And
Sometimes you got to spray down on a fire.
oh, absolutely.
Because if you're out here trying to do this, it's
It's
much better to do
it's-
this.
It's all in how high we can get and how far we can get it. So it's not, you know, it's not a 1,000-gallon-a-minute pump anymore. We need a 2,000-gallon-a-minute pump now to be able to pump enough water to get to 1 million square. I mean, I would imagine when people talked in 1999, no one thought we'd ever have million-square-foot buildings in Kootenai County either. But it is a reality. I mean, we just looked at plans, initial plans for a 975-unit apartment complex with 37 buildings. I look at that as somebody that has to go to those calls. Those are high target risks. We run a lot of medical calls there. We run a lot of fire calls there. If you look at our recent cold weather snap, we ran a lot of calls with broken pipes and emergencies there so when we look at something like that, we understand that our current resources moving forward are not going to be enough.
Have you thought about taking exactly what you did here, the sidebar of this, and putting it on YouTube?
We have actually thought about that very thing. We're going to do some social media things.
Okay, 'cause
We're
I
going to
think
do some
it-
frequently asked questions. And it's interesting because I'm probably not of the social media generation. I don't want to tell on myself, but I'm quickly becoming more, the realization that that people love to click on their phone and be able to see those things. So we're doing exactly that. We're filming them, we're getting the word out, we're making sure that people see it.
Okay, so we need to move. Leslie?
Well, I just want to make one statement. So only the people who are covered by the areas are voting on the bond. Is that correct?
Only people in the Kootenai County Fire and Rescue Fire District will be voting on the bond on May 18th.
Okay, so if somebody pays taxes on a $300,000 value, that's about $72 a year, $720 for the entire bond time. $720 will get somebody 5 minutes, within 5 minutes of fire rescue service.
So,
At the current, with the current population, and I mean, but again, I think we're already looking towards that future, knowing that
It's not
knowing
static.
that 5 stations isn't going to make it for the next 20 years.
okay, fair enough. Thank you, Chief Way.
Thank you, commissioners. I
You
appreciate
bet.
the
Very
opportunity. Have a
informative.
great day.
You too. Okay, let's move back up. Item number 2, Juvenile Probation Yearly Report for District 1. This is Deb Nadeau. Deb is our Director of Juvenile Probation. Go right ahead, Deb.
Good morning, Commissioners, and I have with me Zalata Muir, who is our district liaison with the Department of Juvenile Corrections, and she has reports, a copy to give you. I want to remind the Commissioners, these are not new numbers that you're seeing, so we do a report in November and a report in December that the Commissioners sign with our statistical data as well as our financial.
Can we project
Data.
anything, Deb?
We didn't bring it
Oh, okay. Go right
project-wise,
ahead.
we just brought hard copies. So the commissioners have already signed off on these reports. This is just compiled with a 3-year review that the department puts together for all the county commissioners.
Questions for Deb?
Well,
Zalata will present what you have in front of you
Oh,
for
go
you.
right ahead.
you want the red light on?
Yeah, make sure you, and try to get it,
There you go.
to within a few
Pull it
inches.
in.
Pull it in. You got plenty of, there you go.
There
Okay.
you go.
Good morning. I am Zlata Mur with the Department of Juvenile Corrections, and I'm assisting Debbie Nadeau with presenting the annual Juvenile Justice Report. If you take a look at the first page for the breakdown, this breakdown covers arrests and petitions for the last 3 years only for this county. Arrests are down since 2018. Juvenile detention admissions are also down. It's important to note these specific numbers do not include IDJC custody, because we are not a detention center in this sort of a number. Petitions are also slightly down. For detention admissions, we believe COVID does have something to do with the lower admissions. Obviously, due to the risk, everyone across the state has been trying to keep kids out of detention just to ensure safety for everybody. In the last year, or by last year, I mean 2020, 610 charges were filed in Kootenai County. Of those, 94 were felonies, 401 were misdemeanors, and 115 were status offenses, which is slightly up from last year, but lower than 2018. If you want to go to the next page, these numbers are probation and diversion, so probation is going to be on your left. For releases and intakes, the releases are going to be in blue, and the intakes are going to be brown or burgundy. For 2020, releases are down across the board. Intakes are also down. We're not sure if COVID has a lot to do with that or not, because it's, not necessarily, charges being filed has nothing to do with what's going on. So, and just because a charge has been filed doesn't mean you're going to detention or that you are detained. For the probation success rate, it is at 97% for 2020, which is up from 2019. It's significantly gone on each and every year. For the diversion success rate, that is also correct. They've significantly gone up from 2018 to 2020. For just a snapshot of who is being detained in Kootenai County, now just keep in mind that this is a reflection of the demographic that is in Kootenai County.
Go ahead.
So the average male, the average juvenile is a 14 to 16-year-old white male. They are 14 to 16 at the point of intake, which is at 57%. 82% of the population is Caucasian, and the gender at the point of intake is at 30%, 37% female and 63% male. For a snapshot of one day that we compare every single year on September 30th, if you take a look at the diversion numbers, the probation numbers, they are down, as well as diversion and IDJC custody. We're at the lowest we have ever been, and we credit that to the hard work that the counties are doing in maintaining kids in the communities and utilizing those resources. So for cumulatively 734 hours of community service were completed, which is fantastic, consider it's a COVID year. And $47,000 were paid to victims in restitution. The restitution funds, it's important to know, it's hard to tell what year that they were, and they weren't necessarily for 2020. So if someone had restitution they owed 10 years ago and they paid it in 2020, that's where that number would reflect. Otherwise, it'd be difficult to track when something was paid. If you take a look at recidivism, that is also a little bit down from last year. This is our third year of calculating recidivism the way that we are. And essentially what recidivism by definition here means is 6 months after a juvenile's off probation, do they have a new charge? And then 12 months and so forth. For state funding, this is, I'd say, the most important part. If you take a look at the legislative pass-through funds, so we as a department pass through about $14 million to the counties. And that funding is directly calculated based on the percentage of the juveniles in a county. So it's approximately 28 to 30%. In the last 2 years, you've received 30% of that funding. For the funding stream is from 3 different sources. So juvenile corrections funding, tobacco cigarette funding, and lottery funding. So we are responsible, that 30% for the Juvenile Corrections Act funding. If you take a look at the middle, the substance use disorder funding and the mental health funding is an additional source to that 30%. So it's not included. That is funding that the state covers, drug and alcohol rehab, various kinds of therapies, various programs, things of that nature. So these are funds that the county can apply for because of a memorandum of agreement and that we provide. So we've also gone to a new system of, now using an application to apply for funding, which makes it a lot quicker for departments to track numbers and as well as apply for funding and get it. Because when they apply for a provider, we already pre-screen that provider is something that we'll pay for and things of that nature, and they can easily continue funding as well. Do you have any questions?
Very detailed. Good job.
Thank you.
And it's interesting, with the increasing population, we have decreasing delinquency. Is that a fair statement?
I don't know, when we're looking at the increase in population, how many of those people coming in are retirees
Well,
that
there you
don't
go,
have
yes.
families? So again, the percentage of juveniles in the county versus that population growth, I don't really know what those numbers are exactly, Commissioner, but across the state, we have seen decreases in juvenile offenses over the years.
Interesting.
That is the common standard, and as well as the population, because it does seem that if they're either leaving their kids elsewhere or they're grown.
How do we fare against other Idaho counties?
Fairly well, about consistent. Over the last few years, everything's been consistent, and I can send you a report of the district snapshot and statewide as well. But it's just been pretty consistent. It's actually surprising considering COVID. What we've found since we've gone virtual is there's a whole lot more that we in the counties can do to keep kids out of detention and only detain the kids that are a true safety to the community. However, one of the issues we are seeing is with Rule 19s, which is a hearing to determine whether juveniles should be committed. It's essentially a team hearing that's court ordered. The kids are more complicated than they've ever been. The substance abuse and mental health issues are almost a given. We're also seeing a lot of lower IQ and various other complex trauma situations. And one of the issues with that is we're a corrections institution, and so our objective is to deal with the criminal aspect. However, by the time we're there, the counties have done all that they can to address the criminal situation. So at that point, we're looking at trying to rehabilitate a juvenile and work within our program, even though their needs are much higher. So that across the board has been a serious conversation across the state, because even though, yes, they're responsible for the crimes they've committed, the system that we have is not designed to address criminal behavior in kids that are that high risk on the mental health spectrum. So hopefully that's something that
Okay.
we can work out later.
Okay, thank you. All right, let's move on. Thank you so much, ladies. Appreciate it. Okay, let's move on to item 3. I'm going to try to move this faster if possible. Kootenai County Sheriff's Office, Maintenance, Under Sheriff Matos. Welcome, Dan.
Thank you, Commissioners. Were you planning on this getting over at noon? I'm going to be as brief as I can, okay?
Thank you.
You know, I've been here with Kootenai County going into my 27th year, and the lion's share of that time, the Sheriff's Office had its own maintenance department. And up until about 6 or 7 years ago, and I'm guessing on that date, there was a decision made to bring or rather take the maintenance department away from the sheriff's jurisdiction and put it over into just the general county pool, so to speak. With that said, we've seen some issues with that over time, and Tom Reed's here to speak to it onto some of the specifics. But what's most important to us is to be able to make sure that we're running our facility, in terms of the safety and the welfare of the employees as well, and even sometimes even more so when you're talking to the jail for the people that are incarcerated there. And what we've been seeing over the last couple of years is those resources that were originally assigned to us tend to, from time to time, get siphoned off for other projects, which are getting in the way of the projects and the necessary maintenance at the jail. So this is budget neutral. I'm going to be brief. It doesn't cost anybody anything. We would just like to take control of the maintenance department back under our wings so we can direct them solely, in terms of how we need them to be directed. Again, Tom and Greg, they've all done a good job with what the resources they got. I'm not complaining about that, but the way they're sitting under the general pool of county resources, the attention to the jail doesn't get, in my opinion, and that of others, the attention that needs to get. So I'm going to be brief. I was brief. Could I have Tom come up and speak to some specifics?
Is it necessary? How many individuals are we talking about, Dan? 1?
No, 7? 6. So 6 employees will come over to the jail.
But it's budget neutral.
It's budget
And
neutral.
these
It's
are
just a
people
matter
with
of,
eyes on what you're doing.
right,
Now, these
Meaning the
are
maintenance.
employees that are with Buildings and Grounds currently?
correct.
Okay. Leslie?
Who exactly would they report to? Because I think when it happened 6 or 7 years ago, that the problem was there was a lot of requests being come in and they weren't necessarily going up the chain.
They would report directly to me.
Okay,
Yeah, and that,
okay.
No, I'm just, you want to come up?
Come on
I
up.
want to move this as quickly as we can because we've got,
That's it, okay.
Talking to Dan, I put in some stipulations as far as what needed to happen if this was to happen. And I think, based on those, I'm okay with it. And
Okay.
I talked to Greg, and he appears to be
Okay.
okay with it.
And then post falls plowing, we don't have to worry about that now until November. So can we talk about that at some time?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And on behalf of the sheriff's office, we would do whatever we can do to cooperate with the other departments. But again, we want the focus, or let us be able to focus on our outfit.
Sure.
okay, fair enough.
So then bring it before business meeting, I guess, and that way, because we're going to have to, the financial part of it will have to be transferred and all that.
Yes, ma'am, and again, for the record, it's budget neutral. Thank you.
Okay, fair enough, guys, thank you. Okay, let's move on. BOCC liaison assignments?
Yes, so Panhandle Area Council has moved their meetings to the point where they conflict with HARBS, Hayden Area Regional Sewer Board. And so I'm just bringing this forward to find out who would like to take that over, because it's still an important part of
Okay,
what we do.
and they meet on Thursdays?
Yes, but they're only quarterly, I think. They do have special meetings occasionally, but yeah, Thursday afternoons at 3, which conflicts with my monthly sewer board.
Do you know
meeting.
which Thursday is it? Is it the 3rd or 4th of the month?
Right now it's the 3rd.
Okay, 3rd Thursday. All right. Do you want to take it?
Yeah, do you want to take it?
Why don't you take it and I'll act as the alternate?
That would be great.
So it's quarterly, okay? We got it. Is that it?
Yeah, well, I just want to also make sure about the Basin Commission too. How was the meeting, Bill? Did you enjoy it? I mean, was it?
Yeah, kind of like eating dry toast.
Yeah.
But I was there for the whole thing,
Okay.
and I learned some things, and I will learn more as it goes on.
Okay, because I'm fine with, talking about it as far as they have meetings in Wallace and Kellogg and Spokane and all that. So I just want to make sure that you're comfortable with
No problem.
all that, so. Okay, and I think those are the only two things right now. And the Basin Commission, we do have some cleanup to do because the state website has a former commissioner on there and actually has Bill as the alternate. So we're gonna have to figure that out. Since my paperwork's in, Chris, I don't mind being the alternate on Basin Commission.
You want to do the alternate? Okay, fair enough. Got
All
that?
right.
Okay. Thank you, Leslie. Okay, moving on, pending item status review list, okay. County form of government. Okay, let me comment on this one. Okay, so we received a legal review from one of our attorneys, Dave Ferguson. He made some comments. The comments he made, I think, had to do largely with the fact that there's more, that we have to really defer more to the commission and less to what we require of them per statute. So what I did is I took his comments, I made the changes that he suggested, and I basically just sent it back to him. So let's see where we go from there. I mean, essentially, really what we're relegated to is how we appoint them, which I think is what we agreed to last week. Pretty much everything else is up to the commission. They get to drive their own meetings, their own agendas, what they would put forward if any decisions are made, and if anything is to go to a public vote, which of course we'd have to agree with. So do you want me to, I can finalize that.
Finalize
Well, basically the changes that I made.
what comes back from,
What comes back. No, you know
Yeah,
what,
so-
let me send a copy to you guys.
Yeah, when it comes back from legal, then we'll have to put it on an open meeting for
Right.
adoption.
Okay, fair enough. Okay. Facilities expansion, Leslie,
Next meeting, March 17th.
that's Wednesday.
Yep.
Okay, Pack Airport lease.
Stephen is still reviewing the proposal. I haven't heard anything from him yet.
Okay. 1A, 1B, the audio upgrade for this room.
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow's business meeting.
Okay, and that's the contract? Wonderful. So we can stop looking like we're antiquated. Okay, financial snapshot, we did that last week.
Yep,
didn't we?
April 5th is the next.
Okay. Ballot bond language, Leslie?
Yeah, so we've delayed it till November, and so I plan to hold a town hall this month on the 31st to start talking about the different options that we have in front of us. And I really enjoyed the meeting last week with bond counsel. And so as things progress, then we'll have them more involved.
Okay, cool. For everybody's benefit, the bond language is for the new building, because if we go with the bond, general revenue bond, you'd have to approve it. Okay, and building financing, that's pretty much one and the same.
Yeah, so the exciting part that is doing back of the napkin calculations, it looks like with the returning URD money, that would be able to pay for the loan for the new building. So for instance, a bond would have to be passed only to allow the county to incur debt. The bond would not actually increase your taxes because the returning URD funds would cover that. So if that makes sense, it's going to be really difficult to try to explain to the general population the fact that, why do I have to vote yes on this bond if you have the money? Because state law doesn't allow us to go into debt.
Precisely.
So that's something that I'm going to be going around and holding different town halls and stuff to try to explain that in a better manner. So
Right, so what we're referring to here is these are the urban renewal districts that we were deferring taxes, that taxes were going into over the years. Well, some of these districts are now closing, so we have revenue coming into us. That revenue can be used to pay off the bond, okay? All right, then. That's it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to extend the meeting till about 12:15, just to give people a chance to speak. Please be brief.
I have a timer.
Yep, and we'll keep you to 3 minutes. That should be sufficient, so please come forward and give us your name. Summer, come on up.
Oh.
Sir, let Summer go first, and then you can follow her up, sir. Go ahead, Summer, please.
Obviously, I'm making a comment on the sanctuary ordinance. I think,
Oh, yeah, name and town, please.
sorry, Summer Bushnell, Post Falls, Idaho. I think that Filios and Brooks are making a mistake. For now, we have a good sheriff. An ordinance would outlast the sheriff and any elected official. So I think you should reconsider that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Sir, your name, please, and town.
My name is Skylar Crane. I live here in Coeur d'Alene. And I have copies of almost everything I'm saying. I started this actually by doing a little bit of research because I was upset with information that I was hearing from the main news, and I wanted to find out exactly what was going on. So if we're interested in reducing crime, thank you very much. I appreciate that. And my website is on there if you'd like, or my email is on there if you'd like to have a copy of that in an email form. Let me know and I can send it to you. So anyway, if you want to reduce crime and reduce law enforcement costs, then what we really need to do is to encourage as much as possible the carry and the use of firearms. And here are some interesting statistics on that. Obviously, everybody has the right of personal protection, but the CDC found that self-defense is an important crime deterrent. Victims who had a firearm were always better off when dealing with a criminal than they were not by having no other method. I didn't say that correctly, but anyway. Journal of Criminology at Northwestern University found that individuals use weapons 80 times more in stopping a crime than criminals use in committing a crime. So, and 97% of the time, weapons are never even fired. University of Chicago found that since 1950, 94% of all mass shootings occurred in gun-free zones. They're killing zones. It's the wrong place to be. When there's an armed citizen there to protect, the death rate is 2.3. When they have to rely on the police, the death rate is 14.3. CDC study found that for every 1% increase in concealed weapons permit holders, there is a 4% decrease in crime. University of Texas Department of Corrections found that individual concealed weapons permit holders are 12 times less likely to commit a crime than is the general population and have 1/7 the crime rate of active duty policemen. So actually they're the safest people out there. An interesting place, if you really want to reduce crime, go to Kennesaw, Georgia, and do what they did. In 1982, they passed an ordinance, a law that stated that every homeowner was required to have a weapon and required to have ammunition for the weapon.
Is that the 3-minute mark?
And
Wow.
the crime rate dropped by 90%.
It worked.
It worked.
Wow.
And it has never gone back. It has one of the lowest crime rates. So if you want to reduce costs, pass that ordinance.
I'm
We
gonna
want to
have-
reduce costs and improve life and whatnot. The reason I got really into this was that article. Oh, FBI, by the way, said that 80.
I'm sorry, so your
folks, we have
3
folks
minutes is,
behind
I
you.
didn't
Yeah,
let
that's
it
all
go
right.
really loud, but I
That's all
just
right.
wanted
Yeah,
to.
go right ahead.
Yeah, but.
Welcome to read
appreciate
all of
that.
that.
Absolutely.
Yes, thank you.
Thank
And
you.
by the
This
way,
is
that's
valuable.
not complete. That's only a brief.
All right, thank you, sir.
Mike, come forward, please.
I'm Mike Satrin. I am the Precinct 22 Committee Man for the Kootenai County Republican Central Committee. And I, like Bill, have been an NRA member since I was a kid and got my first training when I was 12 years old. Been a life member for a long time and am a firearms instructor. I fully concur with what the gentleman just said here. His stats are good. I've been following those a long time. I was also not expecting this ordinance or this discussion to come up today about what I had put together from the Florida resolution about being a sanctuary Second Amendment state. But I just wanted to, and I was very pleased to hear Sheriff Norris publicly comment on what he said. I have known he feels that way for a long time, but it was very comforting. Now to tie that together with something else you're following, and that is the form of county government. One of the forms of county government that some eastern counties have put in place and probably more likely urban areas have put in place is where they appoint the sheriff. Now, as an elected sheriff, he really is the chief law enforcement officer of the county. That cheapens when he is an appointed sheriff. So I would hate to see our form of county government go that direction. And it's up to us to elect a sheriff who is the chief enforcement officer of the county. It's up to us to choose one who is constitutional. And I believe that's who we have now. So I just.
Okay. Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it. Sir, come forward.
Randon Oppen, Coeur d'Alene. Second Amendment in the ordinance, we're not asking to gain any extra protections. We're trying to preserve future loss of the protections we currently have. And I think we've seen those are threatened. And I think we want to publicly state we're a Second Amendment. I appreciate the strong opinions of Sheriff Norris and all three commissioners regarding this. Unfortunately, none of you will be here as long as some of the younger people. And I believe it's important we protect our future. And I feel like you're failing to look ahead by passing on this opportunity. I disagree. I disagree that a sanctuary puts us at risk from gangs and whatnot. They're not protected in a sanctuary because they're already committing crimes and our sheriff can take care of them. That it's protecting law-abiding citizens. So I think your hearts are in the right place, as you've all stated your feelings on Second Amendment. Unfortunately, I don't think your heads are in the right place, and I think you need to bring this action up again for immediate consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you. Charity, your turn.
Good afternoon. Well, I apologize for my attire. I didn't know I was coming, and I didn't intend to speak. But when Commissioner Brooks opened his mouth and showed his complete ignorance on the Constitution and Article 5, the concept of nullification, I could not let all of the people behind me sit there and listen to that and not be a little educated. So here we go.
Ahead.
I got my 3 minutes, right?
Yes.
Okay, I'll
Yeah,
keep
go
it
right
to
ahead.
that. So, as it turns out, it is been established, and it was actually written by James and Jefferson, or no, Madison, I'm sorry. It was James Madison and Thomas Jefferson, who wrote against a legislature had passed during the Adams administration, the Aliens and Sedition Act. And they wrote resolutions for the respective states that told them it was the state's duty to reject and nullify any federal law that came out that was not in pursuance of the Constitution, which is what it says under Article 5. Furthermore, as they discussed it and talked about it more, it comes down to local city government levels as well to ensure that the people's rights are never compromised with legislation. And we have to go beyond just the legislation, right? Because we know the executive constantly makes what they call laws through executive orders. Those are completely unconstitutional as well. And it is the responsibility of elected officials at all levels of government to ensure the Constitution is adhered to and not unconstitutional laws and orders. It was decided very early by the Supreme Court. I don't remember the exact year, but I think it was 1803. Mayberry versus Madison, and they said that any laws that are passed that are repugnant to the Constitution are null and void. So that's where nullification comes from. It's completely constitutional. It's under Article 5. I have a Constitution I'd be happy to give you, Commissioner Brooks.
I've read the
I'll
Constitution.
highlight it for you.
And did you know that Jefferson and Madison in 1835 opined a little different? Have you read that document?
I read a lot of them. I like the
Have you
ones
read
that
that
actually
document?
agree with the Constitution.
Okay.
And this is my time, so can I get a couple more seconds?
Go ahead.
So we're going to talk now about the Second Amendment, the sanctuary. The point I want to bring up is we are all about discourse. And I know Commissioner Brooks very loudly complained about not being able to speak to the other commissioners except for in public meetings. So when an opportunity comes up to address a topic of great concern and that is going to affect all of our lives, when one commissioner wants to bring it up for a discussion and the other two just shut it down out of form, why? Why not open it for discussion? Whether you change your mind or not is, you know, who knows? But you should at least allow for the dialogue and the communication between the three of you in a public format, which is why I would concur with the guys that came before me and encourage you to bring it up again, have a second, and have a discourse over it. And I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Charity Miser, Hauser.
Rochelle Otteson, Rathdrum. As far as the appointing the sheriff needs to be elected by the people and accountable to the people, period. And as for the other issue, what if, God forbid, something happens to Sheriff Norris and/or the next sheriff does not share the views he expressed, or the sheriff department gets extreme pressure to change their mind? We do have tyranny now. Various levels of government have told us in the past year how many people we can be around, whether our businesses can stay open, how far apart we must stand, whether we can fellowship at church or not, that we must wear an article of clothing that lowers our immune system for the purpose of making other people feel better, whether we are allowed in public-owned areas, etc. Do we wait for tyranny to get to the level of Bolshevism, or do we stop it now? Our national government is wildly out of control and getting more tyrannical by the day. It is entirely appropriate and necessary that each level of government protects us from tyranny from the larger levels of government. I want our great state of Idaho to be a Second Amendment sanctuary state. However, it is not looking like we can count on our state legislators to protect us from tyranny and violation of our rights. Therefore, the county level should formally declare and codify that the rights of Kootenai County citizens to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed in any way. Thank you.
Thank you.
Doug Belia, Coeur d'Alene.
I'm sorry. No, go right ahead, Doug. I thought somebody was.
No problem. Thank you all for doing this. Leslie, thank you for proposing this and putting on the discussion topic. I'm sorry it did get kind of shut down. I do think it all should be put back on there and put on as an action item. Thank you for moving the meeting along so we could get some voice in here and helping out with that and extending the meeting. I appreciate that. I do appreciate you for your gun support and your story with your family. That was really interesting. One thing you need to remember, though, is the whole entire thing that happened with the Russians, that started with the guns being removed. We need to sit there, establish that. We need to put this forward. One thing I heard about that you guys made a comment about is gangs and stuff moving into the area. I grew up in California. I hear California arguments all the time. I always hear those arguments. Well, what if this one thing happens, whatever else? There is other laws that we can go against them, ways that we can get them for other stuff. Sanctuary isn't protecting that. You are sitting there going against the actual individuals who are citizens that are using this to protect themselves and their families. We had over 80 million guns sold last year. That is a huge thing. 10 million guns were first-time gun owners. It's really stepped up when they saw what happens inside our big cities and how the police enforcement just basically was put to the curb and wasn't allowed to sit there protect their citizens or their businesses. It was a real big wake-up call for a lot of people. We're not worried about the major gun owners. Major gun owners are doing good. A good quote was George Washington, "A polite society is a well-armed society." It is a good one. It is there. They put it in there for a good reason, saying it will not be infringed on. We need to protect this. I would like to see the ordinance. The state is failing us on this, and they're not moving along. What we need to start doing is Idaho. We're in Idaho, one of the reddest states in the union. Why are we still dragging our feet on this? Why are we not sending a message? We need to get our counties to go and start sending the message loud and clear to our state. This is what we want. This is what we need. We need to have this done. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Sir, name and town, please.
My name is Lloyd Drennan. I'm from Coeur d'Alene. First off, Ms. Duncan, I want to thank you very much for bringing this ordinance to the front of this commission here. I really appreciate it. It's a shame when the ladies have to take the lead, but it's nice that they do. I want to mention to you guys, or I'm sure you're well aware of that in 1776, okay, when the Redcoats moved on Lexington and Concord to take away the powder, the guns, and so forth, that was fully within the law of King George. The people who opposed them, that was against the law. So hiding behind this idea, we can't do this because it's against the law, that's not exactly true. It's only against the law if you lose. And there's hundreds of millions of firearms in the United States. They're getting ready to ask us to register those firearms. There's hundreds of millions of people who are going to say no, okay? There is going to be a problem with that, all right? We here in Kootenai County can ask our local officers, our local sheriffs, do not be involved in this. And there is nobody that can compel them. That's been well established by law. The government cannot compel our local people to do it. And this ordinance would help them, give them the opportunity not to be involved in that confiscation. If the federalists want to come in and do that on their own, well, King George kind of found out what that's like, all right? I submit to you, we need this ordinance. The idea that nullification brings about chaos, that's not true. Nullification generally, if it was ever handled willy-nilly, yes, I'm sure. But I don't think you can find a case of people saying, well, we're going to nullify the rape laws, or we're going to nullify the all the other laws that keep the organization of citizens, I don't want to say basically in line, but basically, they set the rules, okay? And people, as long as those rules are constitutional, they don't have a lot of problem with it. Nobody is going to nullify those laws. The nullification comes in play when you're passing a law that most of the people don't want. When you're passing a law that is patently unconstitutional.
Sir, I think we need to wrap it up.
No, he's got 30 seconds.
Oh,
okay.
Go right ahead.
So anyway, the idea that we shouldn't have this ordinance, I think that's specious. I think hiding behind the idea that it's against the law or that it will bring chaos, I think those are weasel words. Ms. Duncan, if you're the only person here that's standing up for the country, thank you.
Thank you.
Nancy King, Coeur d'Alene. I had some prepared comments. I didn't know which way this would go. I appreciate Leslie bringing this to the commission. And Commissioner Brooks, I believe the very first thing you said when she brought this topic up was, yes, I'm all for discussion. And all that was spent on this was hearing from the city or the county attorney and the sheriff for 15 minutes and discussion's done. For that, I don't consider that
I think
discussion.
Leslie got to make it.
Okay, so for 15 minutes, this item was discussed, okay? How can you not move to ensure our constitutional rights are not trampled on by the federal government? Current proposed legislation in the House and Senate is a blatant violation of the Second Amendment right, which states the right of people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Our founding fathers knew what they were doing when they wrote the Constitution. Our Second Amendment right affords citizens protection from a tyrannical government that would like nothing more than for its citizens to have to defend their God-given and constitutional rights and freedoms with a muzzleloader. Current proposed federal legislation does nothing to protect law-abiding citizens to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Dan Bongino's quote sums it up best: gun laws are the only laws that affect the law-abiding citizens and don't affect the criminals one bit. Over the years, our rights and freedoms have been undermined with and without laws. Lockdowns and mandates over the last year sound familiar? But hey, if you are all good little boys and girls, you can celebrate your independence and all the freedoms and rights that go along with it this 4th of July. When the federal government passes laws limiting First Amendment right to freedom of religion, speech, press, or assembly for the greater good of society, are you willing to take a stand and protect that right? When the federal government passes a law allowing certain races to be slaves for certain purposes because they decide it's in the best interest of the nation, are you willing to take a stand to protect that right? Hopefully you get my point without having to go through all 27 amendments. Your duty is to the citizens of Kootenai County in upholding the Constitution, and in my opinion, by whatever means necessary. Shame on you both for not having the courage to even take this opportunity to even discuss on strengthening the very essential constitutional right. I pray you reconsider.
So let's see if is there anyone online, Nancy, that wishes to speak?
Hey, anybody on the phone?
Yes. Yes, I would like to speak. Can you hear me?
Yes, Sandy.
Yes.
Sandy White.
Okay, this is, for the record, I'm Sandy White, and I'd like to say that what you discussed today, I am for the Second Amendment ordinance, and I'm against the alternative form of government. And I think that we need to bring the Second Amendment ordinance back onto the agenda because the people would love to discuss it. Right now, we have a constitutionally elected sheriff, but if the alternative form of government passes, then we could lose that. So the people deserve to have a hearing on this, and I appreciate that you all seem to be pro-Second Amendment now, but we want more. We want that guaranteed. So we want you to back up your words with actions. And that's all I have to say. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Anyone else?
I would like to speak.
Yeah, please, go right ahead. Name and town.
This is Heather in Rostrum.
Go right ahead.
While I appreciate while I appreciate Sheriff Norris speaking out, stating he will not confiscate our guns, we need to make sure we are protected today, tomorrow, and in the future, no matter who our sheriff is. Other Idaho cities and counties are taking a stand and declaring themselves sanctuary cities and counties, and it's time Kootenai County takes a stand. We cannot sit back as our tyrannical, anti-American, anti-Constitution federal government continues to strip away the rights of the American people. Background checks are only the beginning. This administration wants to impose hefty taxes on our guns, put us all in a federal registry, impose additional regulations and fees, and prevent us from accessing ammunition to protect ourselves. Our founding fathers were protecting the people from an oppressive government when they wrote, "A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed." Without the Second Amendment, you can say goodbye to the First Amendment. It is not only our right, but our duty to defend our Constitution at every level of government. Commissioners, I urge you to do your duty and vote yes on the county ordinance.
Thank you, Heather. What is your last name?
Dehay, Dehay.
Thank you.
Okay, then. Is that it for people online? All right, then. So the time is now 12:21, meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it. Thank you for your time.